Hello, today I'm going to talk about the Metagaming microgame number 4, WarpWar. It's from 1977. And it comes in a small package. It's 7x4. And this is the box version, which is nice. It's like 3/4 of an inch thick. It's a diceless system and involves two different groups competing for a somewhat local star group. There's some record keeping involved. You have to keep track of your ships and designing their status on a sheet, so we'll see how that works out. But the art itself is very nice. It's fitting with what it's portraying. It's simplistic, but well done. It definitely conveys a theme. Actually, the art, the star backgrounds are nice as well. Looks like you even have some kind of sort of star cluster going on over here. A bit of theme on the back. Spaceship residing combat. Up screens. Ready beams and missile tubes. Power drive to 5. The battle is about to begin. WarpWar is a fast-playing game of interstellar maneuver and combat. You select the tactics and weapon power settings. No chances involved in the diceless combat system. You must outthink your opponent. You design your own spaceships with beams, screens, missile tubes, and power drive. Ships move through space or jump along warp lines connecting stars. To you must capture the enemy star bases. Advanced rules introduce system ships and technological advancements, which gives newer ships an advantage. It's a 2-player game. Introductory level. It is interesting that the designer gives a shout out to Joe Halderman for WarpWar. Not sure if that's referring to the game or probably the novel, which is inspiration. Thanks, Steve Jackson. The One in God's Eye by Jerry Pernell and Larry Nevin. In supporting concepts, Robert Schultz, Steve Jackson, Ken Schultz, Ben Ostrander, and Rob Taylor for quality playtesting. So it's a nice group for playtesting there. Gives a little more theme in the rules there. It doesn't talk about doesn't seem to talk about the different races involved, so it kind of leaves that up to your imagination. It says it simulates a hypothetical future where time for flights between stars is huge, but ends in brief and violent combat. Warships can enter these stressed space channels, warp lines, between stars for nearly instantaneous travel. Nevertheless, wars among the stars last so long that huge advances are made in technology. Older ships are at a disadvantage against newer ones. There's the components, the rulebook, of course, the map, which is 8x14. It's a thickish paper. And these are all the counters. The color scheme is nothing too exciting, but I guess it's functional. So the map, of course, has numbered hexes for movement. And then there's star hexes, which are the smaller stars. And then there's base star hexes, which have the larger star, for instance, Babylon. And there's 3 base stars on each side of the map. These are warp lines, which are the lines connecting stars. Space hex refers to any hex on a map that does not contain a star. Then the counters. So it's 2 players, 2 different colors, and then each player has a selection of warp ships and selection of system ships. Warp ships are ships that can travel between star hexes. They're identified with a W, and then they have a unique number identifier. And it seems like almost all of them have unique images, which is good. And then similarly, system ships have unique identifiers, and system ships are the ships that cannot travel between star hexes unless carried by a warp ship. A system ship is identified by the letter S and a two-digit number. And similarly for red, the warp ships and system ships. Standard half-inch counters and one-sided. And another thing you'll need is pencil and paper because you'll have to track the ships, and we'll show how that works. Sequence of game events. Play alternates between two players in turns. When one player has completed a sequence of events, it is the other player's turn. The sequence of game events is 1. Count victory points. Count 1 victory point for each enemy base star hex your ships occupy now at the beginning of your turn. If this brings your point total to the level necessary for the victory conditions of the scenario you're playing, then you have won and the game is over. 2. Build ships. Receive new build points. If you're using the advanced scenario, build new ships, repair damaged old ships, and resupply missiles to old ships. Newly built ships are placed on any of your base star hexes that you control at that time. Movement. You may move some, none, or all of your warp ships up to the maximum movement at this time. Warp ships may also pick up and or drop off system ships. Resolve combat. Combat must occur whenever enemy ships occupy the same star hex at the end of a player's movement event. Combat in each star hex is separate and ends when only one player's ships occupy that star hex. No combat occurs when ships occupy the same non-star hex. 5. System ship pickup and drop. After all combat on all star hexes are resolved, the player whose turn is can't have any warp ships drop off any system ships it carries at the star it occupies, have any system ships at a star hex picked up by a warp ship there, or transfer system ships from one warp ship to another at the same star hex. And 6. End of turn. Setup for play. Players decide who will move first. The player moving second chooses which end of the map will be his or her to defend. The 3 star base stars at the player's end of this map are hers. Let's try the scenario. Running scenario, each player starts the game with 40 build points for building warp ships. Must use all to build warp ships at the beginning of the first turn. Each player uses only the base star hex in the middle end of the map. The other base star hexes are treated as ordinary star hexes. The first player to get 1 victory point wins. Repair, resupply technology and system ship rules are not used. Basic scenario. Each player starts the game with 50 build points. Repair, resupply, and technology rules are not used. Each player must use all 50 build points to build warp ships and or system ships at the start of the first turn. Each player uses only the single base star hex in the middle of his end of the map. The first player to accumulate 2 victory points wins. Advanced scenario. All rules are used. Each player uses all 3 of his or her base star hexes. Players get 20 build points at the start of the first turn and 10 new build points at the start of every turn thereafter. Build points may be saved from turn to turn for later use. The first player to accumulate 3 victory points is the winner. Shipbuilding. In the shipbuilding event, the player may build new ships, repair old ships, or resupply missiles to old ships. The player builds ships by expending build points from the stock as necessary to make a written record for each ship built, damage it takes, and the repairs and resupply receives. A record of the build points received and expended will also be necessary. Ship attributes. Warp ships and system ships may be built with the following attributes. It's not necessary for a ship to have all these attributes. Power drive represents the total effective strength of a ship's engines during movement. The power drive of a warp ship gives its movement allowance in hexes. During combat, the P strength of a ship is allotted to its drive and weapons so that those may operate. During combat, a ship may never allocate power from PD in excess of the available PD strength. Each unit of PD strength costs 1 BP to build. Warp generator is WG is the unit that allows the ship to move from star to star through space to jump along warp lines. A ship with a warp generator is a warp ship. Ships without warp generators are system ships. A warp generator costs 5 BP to build. Beams. Each ship may have only one beam projector. The strength of the projector will vary according to the number of build points spent on it. The number of BP spent on the beam is the maximum strength at which the ship's beam may be powered during combat. Screens represent the ability of a ship to surround itself with a protective energy screen. Screens reduce the number of hits damage the ship must take when it is struck by an enemy weapon. Beams and screens are manifestations of the same energy projector generator. Beam and screens may be used simultaneously, but neither may be used at the same round that a missile is fired. The number of build points spent on a screen is the maximum strength at which that screen may be powered during combat. Tubes are used by a ship to launch missiles. Each tube may launch one missile per combat round. It requires a PD allocation of 1 to power a tube for firing. Each tube costs 1 BP to build. Missiles may be fired through a ship's tubes and an enemy ship. Each missile does a basic damage of 2 hits if it strikes. The number of hits damage a missile does may be modified by other factors. One build point will build 3 missiles. A ship may carry any number of missiles. As they are fired, they must be subtracted from the ship's missile stock on the ship's record. Missiles may not be transferred between ships. System ship racks. Let a warp ship carry system ships. System ships may not have SRs, and may not carry other system ships. Warp ship may have any number of SRs, may carry 1 system ship for each SR it has. Each system ship rack costs 1 BP to build. A warp ship may not be carried in a system ship rack. Build points are received by a player according to the scenario being played. These BP are spent to build warp ships and system ships, repair ships, and resupply ships with missiles. The written record is kept by each player for each ship he builds. In the advanced scenario, it will also be necessary to keep a record of build points received and expended. Build points build ship attributes according to the schedule. 1 BP builds 1 unit of power drive strength, or 1 unit of beam strength, or 1 unit of screen strength, or 1 tube for 5 missiles, or 3 missiles, or 1 system ship rack. 5 BPs are needed to build a warp generator. Warp ships are ships with warp generators. They move from hex to hex on the star map and may move along the warp lines. Warp ships may also engage in combat and may carry system ships. Warp ship may select any combat tactic. System ships carried by warp ship are noted by their numbers on that warp ship's record. If warp ship is destroyed, all system ships it was carrying, when destroyed, are also destroyed. System ships do not have warp generators. They may exist only on star hexes, unless carried by warp ships. When a system ship is being carried by a warp ship, its number is noted on the warp ship's record sheet, and system ship's counter does not appear on the map. System ships may never move from one hex to another under their own power. They must always be carried by a warp ship, and may only be dropped off at a star hex. In combat, a system ship may not select the retreat option. It can escape from combat only if carried by a warp ship. Technological levels. In the advanced scenario, the technological level for a newly built ship increases 1 level every 4 turns. Ships always retain their original technological level. Ships built in turns 1 to 4 are 0. Those 5 to 8 are 1. Those built 9 to 12 are 2. Those built 13, 16 are level 3, and so on. In combat, ships add their technological level to the number of hits their beam and missiles do when they hit a target. Ships can add their technological level. Ships can also add their technological level to the number of hits their screen can absorb. Repair and resupply occurs during the shipbuilding event of a player's turn. A ship must have started their turn on one of the player's starbase hexes in order to be eligible for repair and resupply. The system ship may be repaired or resupplied with missiles, even when it is loaded on a warp ship. Build points are spent for repair and resupply in the same way they are spent when a ship is built. 1 BP builds just as much for repair as for original building. A ship can be repaired partially or wholly up to its original strength in each attribute. Resupply of missiles allows the player to replace a ship's original stock of missiles with some After some have been fired or destroyed in combat, 1 BP replaces 3 missiles. The ship may not be resupplied with more missiles than is originally carried. Fractions of build points left over after missile resupply are not saved. However, 1 BP can be used to resupply, for instance, 3 ships with 1 missile each. Movement. During the movement event of a player's turn, he may move some, none, or all of his warships up to their maximum power drive strength, taking any damage into account. Warp ships may pick up or drop system ships during movement. Ship counters are placed face up on the map. System ships are not placed on the map will be carried by warp ships, but are placed on the appropriate star hex when not on a warp ship. Specific movement rules. Warp ship must stop their movement on any star hex occupied by an enemy ship. This applies to warp ships moving either normally or by warp lines. Warp ships may freely move through space hexes occupied by enemy ships. Warp lines between stars are treated as space hexes for movement purposes. Warp ship whose PD is reduced to 0 may not move. PD strength used for movement during the movement event is not considered lost or expended during the following combat event. When combat commences, the ship may allocate all its present PD strength, that is, its original PD less than any damage it's taken. Ships may not move onto an enemy base star hex during the first turn. Warp ship movement. Warp ship movement is governed by the power drive unit. Warp ship uses its PD during movement as if it were a star of movement points. A warp ship with undamaged PD equals 7 would have 7 points for movement. It costs a warp ship 1 movement point to doing the following. Move from one hex on the map to an adjacent hex, or move the full distance along a warp line from the star hex at one end of the star hex to the other end, or drop off 1 system ship during the movement event, or pick up 1 system ship during the movement event. Warp time movement is accomplished by having the warp ship move onto the star hex at one end of the warp line, costing 1 movement point, and moving it to the next star hex in that warp line, also costing 1 movement point. Warp ship may not stop in any intermediate hex in the warp line when using warp line movement. Combat. Combat must occur when ships of both players occupy the same star hex at the end of a player's movement. Each contested star hex is treated as separate combat and is resolved separately. The player whose turn it is decides which order he will resolve combats and contested star hexes. The combat on one star hex is resolved before the combat on the next star hex begins. The combat event of a player's turn is over when combat on all contested star hexes has been resolved. Combat is resolved as follows. Each player writes an order for each of his ships at that star hex, keeping it concealed from his opponent. It should include a combat tactic from the combat results table, attack, dodge, retreat, a target enemy ship for beam fire, if any, target enemy ship for missile fired, if any, in each missile's drive setting, a power allocation from PD to beam, screens, ship drive, and tubes, if missiles are fired. This may not exceed the ship's total, current total PD, which system ships, if any. The ship, if warp ship, is to pick up or drop. When both players have finished trading their orders, they show them to the other, read the combat results table, and conjunction with the ship orders. Players determine the result for each weapon fired. Players apply the results of weapon hits to the ships. Any damage a ship receives is immediately marked off its ship record. Any ship that has received enough hits to reduce all its attributes to 0, except for the warp generator, is destroyed. Ships that successfully retreated or move to any hex adjacent to the star hex, if both players still have ships on the star hex. On that star hex, a new round of combat has begun on that hex. Writing, revealing, and applying one set of orders constitutes one combat round. Combat ends in a star hex when A. all one player's ships have been destroyed, or B. all one player's ships there have successfully retreated off that hex, or 3 consecutive combat rounds occur in which no ships take any damage, not absorbed by screens. In that case, the player whose turn it is must withdraw all his ships from that star hex to any hexes adjacent to that star hex. System ships are assumed picked up by any warp ship you wish. Power allocation and ship orders. Each ship order describes a ship's actions during one combat round. Much of the order will detail how much power is allocated from PD to the other ship attributes. The power allocated from PD is necessary for those other attributes to operate. No more power may be allocated to attributes that is undamaged and available in the PD unit. Drives, beams, screens, and tubes are the attributes that need powering. The warp generator, missiles, and system shipwrecks do not need power. It may be helpful to think of a missile as a little ship that exists for only one combat round and always uses the attack tactic. The missile also has its own drive unit, which can be set to any level of 1 or greater when launched, regardless of the PD of the firing ship. A missile does a basic 2 hits of damage when it hits. When writing orders, remember, system ships may not select the retreat tactic. Only warp ships may attempt to retreat. Reading the combat results table. Beam fire, the appropriate cell from the CRT for beam fire, is right at the intersection of the target ship's combat tactic column and the firing ship's combat tactics row. The specific row is found by subtracting the target ship's drive allocation from the firing ship's drive allocation and using the row corresponding to the difference. Here's the differences. Here's the firing ship tactics, and here's the target ship tactics, and these are the results. Explanation of combat results. The miss results when the weapon fired missed the target ship and no damage was done. Escapes. The escapes result means that the ship that selected the retreat combat tactic successfully withdrew from its enemy and escaped. In order to escape, a retreating ship must simultaneously obtain the escape result against each enemy ship, not missile, that fired on it. Hit result means that the beam or missile fired at the target hit it. A beam which hits does damage equivalent to the power of the beam, plus tech level. A missile which hits does 2 hits damage, plus tech level. Hit plus 1 and hit plus 2 means you had 1, 2 hits respectively to the hits of damage inflicted by the weapon. Missile fire, the appropriate CRT cell for missile fire is right at the intersection of the target ship's combat tactic column and the firing ship's attack row. Missiles always attack. The specific ship tactic row is found by subtracting the target's drive allocation from the drive setting given to the missile. Remember, a missile may be given any drive setting of +1 or greater and no PD cost except the 1 PD needed to power the tube. Recording ship damage from combat. When enemy weapons hit a target ship, that ship takes damage cumulatively from all weapons of all ships that hit it in each combat round. The amount of power allocated to a ship's screens plus that ship's technological level is subtracted from all hits a ship receives. If the screen is not powered, no tech level is added to the S equals 0. The hit plus 1, hit plus 2 results from the CRT add 1 and 2 hits respectively to the hits a weapon inflicts. 1 hit, if unabsorbed by screens, does 1 build point worth of damage to the target. Warp generators never take damage in combat. When all the rest of the ship is destroyed, the warp generator explodes. After subtracting the hits absorbed by the target ship's screens from all its hits scored on it, the remaining hits, effective hits, are taken somewhere in the target's attributes. When all the ship's attributes except for the warp generator are reduced to 0 and the ship is destroyed, its counter is then removed from the map. The player owning a ship decides where the hits are to be taken. System ship pick up and drop in combat. A warp ship may pick up or drop a system ship during a combat round if it allocates drive equals 0 and screen equals 0 and selects the dodge or retreat tactic. Only one system ship may be picked up or dropped per combat round. The warp ship may fire its beam while picking up or dropping off a system ship, but may not fire missiles. System ships dropped during a combat round may not fire weapons or be fired on that combat round. System ships picked up during a combat round may not fire any weapon during that round, but may power screens. They may be fired upon by enemy ships. If a system ship was to be picked up by a warp ship on a given round, but the warp ship is destroyed during that round, the system ship is not automatically destroyed but remains on the star hex. If the warp ship dropping a system ship is destroyed on the round, it drops the system ship is not destroyed. If the warp ship successfully retreats on the round, it drops the system ship stays in the star hex. System ship pick up and drop after combat. After all combat on all star hexes has been resolved for a player's turn, he may designate any system ships he wishes picked up or dropped by any warp ship on the appropriate star hex. Then we'll get into setup and play. So here's setup. I'll be doing the advanced scenario. The advanced scenario, each side gets 20 build points, and then they get 10 each turn after that. So I decided for both red and white, to build one warp ship and one system ship, and just have 10 for each. So for white, the warp ship has a PD of 3. It's got one beam, no shields. Of course, it's got the warp generator and one system ship rack. So for a total of 10 there. So it's got a little bit of offense, but not much. Put him on Babylon. And the system ship, 4 PD, 3 beam, 1 shield, 1 tube, and then a set of 3 missiles. So for a total of 10. Then we'll put them on Garrett. I'll set them here for defensive purposes right now. And then for red, their warp ship has 3 PD, 1 beam. So again, a little bit of offensive. No shields, warp generator, of course, 1 system rack, no missiles. For 10 build points there. And their system ship, 3 PD, 3 beam, a little more shields than the white player. So 2 shields, 1 tube, and then 1 set of 3 missiles. Then they'll have one of their system ships defensively on Larsu, and then they'll have their warp ship on And then for a turn tracker, I'm just going to move a counter up the hexes here to count the turns, and then on these I'll keep track of the build points. And for each ship I'll be keeping them on like this kind of recipe card thing here. It seems like that'll work pretty well. Then we'll get into play. Start on the first turn. So first you do count victory points, build ships. I've done that. Movement. So only the warp ships can move because the other ones stay on systems, unless the other ones are carried on warp ships. He's got PD of 3, so he's going to move up this. He's going to move up this path and approach the systems from there. So 1, 2, 3. There's no combat or system ship pickup or drop off, so then we'll go to red. And their PD is 3 as well. So they're going to go up here and be prepared to meet this other warp ship. 1, 2, 3. There's no combat or system ship pickup or drop off. Then we'll move to the next turn. No victory points yet. Build ships. So they each get 10 build points to build ships. So what's going to build with their 10 build points? They're going to build a system ship similar to the one they built before with a PD of 4, beam of 3, screen of 1, a tube, a missile with 3 missiles. So that's a total of 10. And I'll put it in Nineveh because that way they can protect that base planet. And they have Garrett, nephew Garrett, defended there, and then the warp ships up on the Babylon road. So then we'll see about the warp ships. He doesn't want to engage in combat quite yet, and now that he has the system defended, he's going to back off a little bit until he gets another system ship. So 1, 2, 3, he'll back off. Then there's no combat or system ships being picked up or dropped off. Then we'll go to red. So red has the 10 build points, and they're also going to build another system ship similar to one they had before with 3 PD, 3 beam, 2 screen, 1 tube, and then 1 set of 3 missiles, so a total of 10. And they'll put them on Mosul. That way they're protecting that base planet there. And the only one that can move is the warp ship. And they have 3 PD, so they're gonna move up here, thinking they'll get closer to these paths here. So 1, 2, 3. And then they don't have any combat either, so we'll move on to turn 3. So then white goes, and they get build points. They get 10 build points, but next turn is going to be turn 4, and they get higher technology at turn 4. So instead of building, they could build either warp or system ship this time. They're going to wait till next time, and then they'll have more build points. So they're just going to keep track of their build points. So they have 10 carrying over for next time. And they're not going to move. They're just going to kind of sit tight and wait till they get more resources here before they move out. So on red's turn, he gets 10 build points, and he's still at tech 0, but he's going to build another warp ship, the cost of 3 PD, 1 beam, and 5 for the warp generator, and one for the systems rack, so for a total of 10. And then he's going to put that over in Larcy by the system ship. And then movement, he'll take 1 movement point to put the system ship on his warp ship, and I'll just do that by basically setting the system ship over here on his card. And he has PD of 3, so he has 2 remaining. He'll go 1, 2. He's going to stay where he is with the other warp ship up here. Then we'll get to turn 4. So they had 10 carryover build points and then 10 more for this turn, and then technology increases by 1. So they're going to build a warp ship with obviously tech 1, and it's got 20 points. So the warp ship will have 5 PD, 4 beam, 2 shield, 5 warp generator of course, 2 shipwrecks, 1 tube, and then 1 group of 3 missiles, so for a total of 20. And then we'll put that over on Ugart with a system ship. And then movement, so we'll use that one. We'll load up the system ship on there for 1 movement point, and he's got 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'll put this over on the indicator here, seeing he's carrying those. And then red's build to get 10 build points. They're going to build another system ship similar to the other designs, but this time it has a technology of 1, and he'll put it here to defend one of his worlds. He'll put it here. And then the warp ships. He'll move up to this star. He's just going to use one movement point. Yeah, I'm thinking there might be a battle there. He's going to drop a system ship off in this star. No combat, so we'll move up to the next turn. Turn 5. And now White's turn on turn 5. So they're going to build another system ship, and this time with a Tech 1. Similar designs before, PD4, Beam 3, Shield 1, Tube 1, and then one group of 3 missiles. And then they also want to defend their bases, so they'll set it here. Defend that. And then movement. So they're going to move their warp ship with a onboard system ship up to this star. And they'll drop off their system ship. So there will be a combat at that star then. So set up for the combat then on White's turn here. Red has warp ship 3 with a tech level of 0. Unloaded system ship 13 with tech level of 0. White has a warp ship 2 with tech level of 1 and unloaded system ship 20, tech level of 0. So for the first round of combat here first, writing out the orders. So red W3, he's going to dodge, distributing his power 2 drive and then 1 beam, which will be going at W2. His S13 will be attacking, and his power distribution will be 1 drive, no shields, 1 beam going to S2, then 1 tube launch missile, and the missile will go at drive 3 to S20. White, action will be attack, power distribution 2 drive, 1 beam going to W3, 1 shield, and 1 tube for launching a missile, and the missile will go at drive 3 to W3. And then S20, action attack, power distribution is drive 1, beam 1 going to S13, and 1 for the tube for launching a missile, and a missile will be going at drive 3 to W3. Let's go through and do the combat. So W3 is going at W2. The drive difference between the two is 2 to 2, so it's 0. The firing ship tactic is dodge. The target ship is attack, so dodge to attack. Drive difference is 0, so it's a hit. So it's doing a beam at level 1, but they have shields up, so it absorbs it, so no damage. So since it has 1 shield, it absorbs the hit. And then we'll do S13, that is going to S20. It's attack to attack. The drive difference again is 0. So we'll look at the chart here. Attack to attack difference. Hit plus 2. He's doing a beam. And they have 1 shield up, so they get 1 damage. And then we'll have that affect the beam. And then he's doing a missile, which is a attack at a drive 3. And so it's drive 3 to drive 1, so plus 2, attack to attack. +1. So missiles does 2 hits, +1, so it's 3. And they have 1 shield up, so they take 2 more hits. So I'll take the tube out and assume it's simultaneous though, so that won't go into effect till later. And then W2, he's at a tech level 1, so you add that on. He's going at W3. W3 has a drive of 2. So tech levels are added to the weapons or the screens, and since they have a tech level 1, they'll be adding to it. So their drives are equal. Their beam is 1, so add 1 to that, so it's 2 going against W3. That doesn't have any shields up, so it's already at a 2 advantage. Is going attack to dodge, so the firing ship is attack. Receiving one is dodging, it's equal, so it's a miss. And then the missile, he's firing a missile at W3 as well. The missile's drive is 3, W3's drive is 2, so the difference is +1. So looking at attack to dodge, so the drive is in a group of 0 to +1, so it's a miss. And then S20 is going at S13. They're at tech level 0, so they don't get any advantage there. Their drive is 1 to 1, so it's 0 again. They have a beam at S3, and they're going attack to attack. Hit +2. Strength is 1. And they have no shields up, so at 3 damage. And then their missile is also going at W3, and it's attack to attack. +2. Missiles do 2 damage. They don't have any shields up, so it does 4. So they have 2 PD left and 1 beam left, and they lost their missile and tube. Then we do the next combat round. So that's a bit how to play it. So that's the WarpWar from Metagaming from 1977. It's a pretty basic game, but you can do a lot with it. It obviously doesn't have aids to keep track of things. You have to do your own. It's got diceless combat, which is interesting. So it's a lot of kind of logic and tactics involved without any randomness. It's not a whole lot of components. They're kind of basic, but it works fine. It's innovative for its time, definitely. And it's definitely good for a sit-down playthrough. So give it a lot of credit for being obviously one of the games that kind of started it all. So I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Thanks a lot.